We're moving into beginning. Would you open up your writer's notebook? Open up writers to a new page. Put the date on it. Today is February 5th. Now that we've taken the mock FSA writing test, I'm going to use the data that I've gathered from reading, and I'm not done quite reading yet. I still probably have about 20 essays to read and score. It's time for us to kind of move into our writing boot camp. And what that means is, if you think about people that go into the military and they start off by going to boot camp. Boot camp is a 6-week program in which people start to get in condition, okay? Start to get ready physically for the work that they're going to have to do in the military. And so we're going to do the same thing, except we're not going to necessarily be focusing on our physical fitness, but we're going to be focusing on our writing and how well we write. Now, a lot of you raised your hands the other day when I asked how many of you remembered to go directly to the writing prompt when you opened up your booklet on Tuesday. A lot of you raised your hands that you did do that. Now, who remembered the next step? After you read the writing prompt, what are you supposed to do? Natalie? No, there's something you're supposed to do. Roman? So you think you write your plan before you even read the text set? Pardon me? Why would you draw your plan? That doesn't make sense, and that's not what I taught you. Emma? You do think about what it's asking, but then what do? You don't just think, you do something else. Drexy? You write your thesis statement. Now, how many of you did that? How many of you remembered that? Okay, so you remembered to go to the writing prompt, but you didn't remember to write your thesis statement right there. And the reason why you do that is because you need to make sure that you understand, just like Emma said, think about what it's asking you. You need to think about what it's asking you, and you need to write your thesis right then and there on that page, because you want to make sure that you fully understand what you're supposed to be doing, and that your response, that your essay, is going to be a response to the actual prompt. If you don't write your thesis statement right away on this page, after you've read the prompt, then you're not going to be responding to the prompt correctly. And I will tell you that if you don't respond correctly, in some situations, you're going to get a 0. You're going to get a 0 on it. And why that's important is because you have to keep in mind, all right? You didn't take the FSA in 3rd grade. The expectation is to get a level 3. But when you go into 4th grade, it's not just a writing test. It's not just a reading test, pardon me. It's also the writing test. And the score from your writing goes into the reading for one overall score. So your goal is to get a level 3, but if you don't do well on the essay, that's going to be much more difficult to do. So we have to make sure that we are practicing how to respond to the prompt. Okay. Up here, and Roman, if you could look up here and stop with the pencil, it would be really helpful, okay? Because if you're not looking up here, if you're not giving me your attention, if you're just listening to my voice, you're not really processing, you're not really learning. It's like the difference between listening to the radio and actually playing an instrument, okay? So let's look at the prompt for the essay from the mock test that we took. It says, write an informative essay about the effects wild animals and humans have on each other when they live in the same area. Use information from the passages in your essay. Okay, so in your notebook right now, I want you to write a thesis statement that goes with this prompt. Don't think about what you wrote on Tuesday. Think about what your thesis statement should be and write it right now. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Okay, you should already have the date on it. I asked you to do that first. Okay, let's share some of the thesis statements that you wrote. Roman, what did you write? Okay, I don't think the prompt was about the Revolutionary War. The prompt says, write an informative essay about the effects wild animals and humans have on each other when they live in the same area. So why is your thesis about the American Revolution? Elizabeth, what did you write? All right, so some animals affect humans more in different places or areas, but what does this actually say? And I know it might sound to you like I'm being really picky about this, but if the person who is scoring your essay is in any way in doubt that you understand what you're doing, okay, then they're going to think you're off topic. So your goal is to include as much of this exact language as you can and still come up with a thesis statement. Okay? So, Galila, you want to give it a try? Okay? And I think that we have to be careful with using that word big because it's almost more than what we see here. Okay? See, for us, we've all read the text set, right? So we kind of know where it's going. But if you followed this if you follow this procedure exactly as you should have, you wouldn't have even read the text set yet. Okay? And so that helps you in a way to keep you right on track for this. Did somebody have something different? Haley? So that last part that probably doesn't belong in the thesis, okay? So let's say it again, nice and loud so that we can hear it on the recording. There are many effects humans and wild animals have on each other, okay? And I would just kind of tweak that just a little bit by saying that wild animals and humans affect each other's lives when they live in the same area. Okay? Can you see how much of the language of the prompt I used in my thesis statement? Because I don't want the person reading it to be at all in doubt. That first column that I shared with you on the rubric has to do with understanding what your purpose is, understanding what your task is, so that if your thesis statement is off topic at all, you're not going to do well in the scoring, and in some cases, like I said, you could get a 0. So the friend who wrote all about dogs got a 0. Okay? The friend who wrote an opinion essay about whether or not you think that it's the right thing to do to kill coyotes got a 0. Okay? Because that response, those responses were not aligned with the writing prompt. So that's why we want to practice doing our thesis. Roman, what are you writing right now? Because I think that's what got in the way of you last time, is that whatever you're doing back there, you're not paying attention. You're not plugged into this lesson. If this was the actual test and you had written about the American Revolution, you would have gotten a 0. So I'm trying to help you and teach you some ways that you can make sure that you don't get a 0. Okay, so let's try another one. Here is a different prompt. And remember, again, we get our booklet, we get our little packet. First thing we do, we go and read the writing prompt. Before we even leave this page, before we even turn to the text set, write our thesis statement. Write on this paper. Now, I will say just a couple of things. There are 2 types of essays that you're going to be asked to write. They're going to ask you either to write an informative that explains, which we've been working on recently, or they're going to ask you to do an opinion essay. And we did a lot of work with opinion essays earlier in the year. And we'll revisit it as we get a little bit closer just to review. So if it is an opinion piece, you're going to have to write 2 thesis statements, 1 for each side of the argument. Think back. Remember zoos? You had to write an opinion essay as to whether zoos were harmful or helpful to animals. And so one thesis statement was, zoos are helpful to animals. Another thesis statement was, zoos are harmful to animals. So if it's an opinion, you're going to have 2 thesis statements. If it's informative, you're going to have 1. And you've got to know the difference. That's one of the first things you think about. What are they asking me to do? And identify the type of essay, identify the topic. All right, so let's look at this one. The passages you read were about the histories of hamburgers and tacos. Write an essay in which you explain how the histories of these two different foods are alike and different. Okay, write a thesis statement based on that prompt. That's an opinion. Are they asking me for an opinion? Revise. Guys, this has to become automatic. It has to become quick. It's something you have to be able to do without sitting there thinking for too long. You definitely want to think, what are they asking me for? Now, hopefully you're noticing the language in this prompt, because not only are they telling you that you have to write an informative essay, it's not an opinion. They don't want to know whether tacos are better than hamburgers or hamburgers are better than tacos. That's not what they want. They want you to explain how the histories of these two foods are alike and different. So not only are you going to be writing an essay that's informative, you're going to be writing an essay that's in a text structure of comparing and contrasting. So stop for a second and think about that. When you go to write, you have to use all of those key words that are on your chart that's in your green packet for a comparing and contrasting text structure. And that's where that standard that some of you still haven't mastered is going to come into play. You identify the text structure of something you're reading by looking for those key words. You write in that text structure by using those key words. So those key words, alike and different, are going to have to be in your thesis statement. Who has one they can share? Aiden? Say it again. That's only part of it. Hamburgers are alike from tacos. It's only part of it. They're asking you to compare not the hamburgers and the hot dog, and the tacos. What do they want you to compare and contrast? Not the food itself. What is it, Drexy? The history of it. The history of it. They're not asking you to compare hamburgers to tacos. They're asking you to compare their histories. Natalie? There you go. The histories, let me read it again. The histories of hamburgers and tacos are different and similar in many ways. So notice the language from the prompt is there. You can also write it in other ways, like although hamburgers and tacos are different foods, they have a similar history. But you want to make sure that history is in this prompt twice. It's important. Okay, because if you compare hamburgers and tacos in your essay, you get a 0. That's why this is a very complex task, because you have to demonstrate comprehension. Not just the writing, but the comprehension. Okay, let's try another one. The passages you read were about volcanoes. Write an essay in which you explain how people's lives can be affected by volcanoes. Use information from the sources in your essay. So notice, just like the prompt from Tuesday, we have something talking about the effects. What text structure is that? Roman? Cause and effect. So not only are you going to be writing information, an informational essay, but you're going to have to write it in a cause and effect text structure. So inside your body paragraphs, you're going to need to use that language. Okay, quickly write a thesis statement to go with this prompt. The passages you read were about volcanoes. Write an essay in which you explain how people's lives can be affected by volcanoes. Use information from the sources in your essay. Sean, you want to share yours?
Volcanoes can affect people's lives in many ways.
Okay, did everybody hear that? Yeah. Volcanoes can affect people's lives in many ways. Okay? Language right from the writing prompt. The person reading your essay, when they see that thesis statement at the end of your introduction, they're going to know that you read the prompt properly and that you're responding to it properly. Okay? So we want to make sure that that's very clear. If you do it now before you read the text set, what you read about in the text set, number one, you'll know what's important. Okay? You'll know what's important. You'll know what you'll be looking for. You're going to put that lens on. The lens is going to be your thesis statement. You're going to read the text set, and the only thing you're going to pay attention to are parts of the text set where it talks about volcanoes impacting somebody's life. The rest of the information might be great to know and learn about, but it's not going to be important for your essay. So that's why we do this at this point. That way we're not distracted by the things we read. So we stay on prompt. But also because when we read, it's going to tell us what to pay attention to. We really have to make sure that we're doing that. All right, let's find another one. Here's another one. Just get it to go up a little bit. The readings talked about the problems that polar bears face and what is being done to help save the polar bears. Write an informative essay in which you explain what types of problems that polar bears face and the solutions that are being proposed to solve these problems. Use information from the passages in your essay. What kind of an essay do they want you to write, Marley? Informational, informative. We're explaining something. What text structure do they want you to write it in, Sean? Problem solution, okay? So think about the language of this writing prompt and write a thesis statement in response to this writing prompt right now in your notebook. Readings talked about the problems that polar bears face and what is being done to help save the polar bears. Write an informative essay in which you explain what types of problems that polar bears face and the solutions that are being proposed to solve these problems. Emma, you want to give it a try? Okay, but that only deals with the problems part, right? It only deals with the problems part, okay? Aliana?
Polar bears face many problems, and people are finding many ways to help polar bears.
Okay, all right, so we have, the only thing I would change about that, Aliana, is I would make sure that, I would say something like, people are coming up with solutions to address these problems, so that we're using that word solution, okay? Galila?
Polar bears face many problems that professionals found the solution.
Okay, the only problem I have with that is you don't know that they are professionals. What if one of the things we read about is about a group of kids making posters? Okay, so we don't know that they're professionals. So just be careful that you're not assuming or adding something that's going to change it. Roman?
Polar bears are dying of many ways, but they are being taken care of.
Okay, where does it say in this prompt that polar bears are dying? It doesn't say anything in this prompt about polar bears dying. So when you start adding things that are not in the prompt, then number one, that's not a thesis statement anymore because it's got details in it. And number two, it's off topic. Okay? So you got to be careful. You're going to need some more practice with this. Okay, one more. Direxie? Okay, people are trying to solve the problems that polar bears face. Okay, so anything worded like that is going to work. Okay, it doesn't have to be exact, everybody with the same thing, but it has to be the same meaning using the language. Okay, the last one we're going to do today, and this is the one, Roman, that you might already have done, is I want you to turn to where you wrote the prompt for the text set that we're reading right now. You wrote this prompt in your notebook yesterday before you started reading your text set. So using the language of this prompt, I want you to write a thesis statement. So go ahead and do that right now.